Amongst the many chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, there is one that stands above the rest. They're the greatest of the Space Marines, and they are the ones that all others must aspire to be like. The Lamenters. Alright, let's get started on this, What do you mean you talk about Gunnar Man? Amongst the many chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, there is one that appears in the marketing the most. The Ultramarines. From the gene seed of the Primarch Robert Guberman, the Ultramarines are one of the most renowned Space Marine chapters. They come from the system of Ultramar, with the capital planet of Macragge, where much of their ranks and their Primarch hail from. Much of their culture comes from the system of Ultramar, and this gives them the benefit of interacting with normal people more often. Or at least what's normal for this techno-fascist Roman dystopia that gets invaded by all manner of galactic horrors. So yes, the Ultramarines and the people of Ultramar are very close. The chapter master also serves as the Lord of Macragge and runs the planet and the system as a whole, making everyone participate in his sick Roman bureaucracy fetish. You may be into BDSM. This guy's into SPQR. This camaraderie is nowhere near the level of salamanders, but they are at least far more willing to work with non-space marines in a military sense. So no, John Ultra over there won't fight through hundreds of Tyranids to save the one orphan who may or may not be eaten already, but he will at least work with the Imperial Guard to organize an attack against the Tyranid threat, even if it just means using them as a shield until the enemy drowns in their blood. Generally speaking, they're the most uptight about the Codex Astartes out of all the Power Armor boys. This is a set of strategies and organization and blah 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 blah, what a bunch of lame shit. Big Blue boys follow the Big Blue book so hard you'll get big blue balls before they actually do anything. No giant space wolves or unique battle tactics here, it's just missionary vanilla space combat, as the God Emperor intended. Appropriate, given their adherence to our favorite throne daddy, seeing huge deviations from their little Roman book as heresy. Note the word huge, Leandros. That being said, they are not completely inflexible. Much like their dad, the Smurfs are tactical geniuses seeking to grow and learn from their past mistakes. Because what's the point of being the most logical and analytical Space Marine chapter if you can't at least be a little flexible? So yes, they adapt to a situation as needed. But no, they will not stray too far from Daddy's rulebook. Also, like their Blue Daddy, the Blue Man Group have a bad case of the blues. See, during the Horus prequel, the Ultramarines were a deciding factor during the Siege of Terra. If they had arrived an hour earlier, trade allegiance would have been overrun, and the 40th millennium would seem much less grim and dark. To some, it adds flavor to a seemingly boring faction, that they were the deciding factor to what plunged the galaxy into chaos, and they still feel guilty about it thousands of years later. To me, it's a good excuse to assign blame. Why is the Emperor almost dead? The Ultramarines relate. Why don't the Blood Angels have a Primarch? Because the Ultramarines relate. Why is the Empire plunged into darkness, forced to partake in a seemingly endless war, where billions are slaughtered almost daily? Ultramarines relate. Why is my army being nerfed again? Ultramarines relate. Need a lawyer? 555 Ultramarines. Identity theft? Alfarius. Alright, let's talk about how the sons of Rowboat Gorilla Man organize themselves. Which is to say, how do most Space Marine chapters organize themselves? As the Codex states, Space Marine chapters are limited to 1,000 Marines, divided into 10 companies. Unless you're cool and you're a Black Templar. Wait, don't forget about the 100 Vanguard Marines that have been added on top of that. But they don't count, do they, Ganja Man? 10th company is for the Scout Squads, the newly ordained neophytes who have recently finished their training and are now beginning their service to their chapter. They aren't technically full Astartes, not yet at least. Scouts won't usually engage in full-scale battles. Lightly armored and lightly armed, they infiltrate enemy lines, gather relevant information, engage in some light espionage, and leave. You know, scout shit.
Think fast, chuckle nuts!
9th Company is when the scouts are fully inducted as Astartes, usually taking on defensive duties. Since they are newly inducted, they're the ones that are left to be eaten by whatever attacks the home base this week. They're known as the Stormbringers, named so because of the absolute shitload of firepower they bring to the table. The combination of heavy fire and being the little brothers of the chapter provides a pretty hilarious image. See, most Space Marines look at the Ninth with a kind of fraternal admiration, probably for the same reason that older siblings love their younger siblings, but still make them clean toilets and defend the home from bloodthirsty monsters. Aw, look at little Johnny with his Hellblaster. He just died defending our encampment from scores of bloodthirsty orcs. I'm so proud. 8th Company is when things begin to get real. The 8th is still a support company, but it's more about offensive support, featuring more close quarters combat. Since they're placed in more conflict-driven positions, the 8th is allowed to be a little bit more loose and fast with the Codex and its edicts, but only so long as they have an older, more experienced member to keep an eye on them and make sure things don't get too buck wild. 7th and 6th companies are both reserve companies, but they take on different duties. 7th will partake in active battles alongside other companies as a support role, usually making use of aircraft and swift assaults. 6th Company are the tank boys, supporting other companies with heavy armor and heavy weapons, but about half the time they're stuck at home guarding the chapter's armory in the Temple of Hera. 2nd through 5th companies are the main battle companies, and will take on the brunt of the fighting. They're the most standard and marketable of the Ultramarines, typical rank-and-file soldiers that are everywhere. 2nd Company is the only notable one out of these, typically taking on the most dangerous operations the Ultramarines face. 2nd will employ unorthodox and downright reckless plans in order to see their goals done. Since they're typically the most experienced and battle-hardened of the chapter, it's pretty expected of them to do so. Finally, there's the 1st Company, the apex of the chapter, the best of the best, the warriors of Terminator Stern Guards and Guy Man's bodyguards. Right, let's talk name characters. Namely, Marneus Calgar, Chapter Master of the Ultramarines. You've probably seen him in the new Space Marine 2 video game, and you probably know basically nothing about him, except that he looks like a brick, and he's important. I'll try to keep this brief. I have a short attention span, and so do you probably. When Marneus was born, he went by the name Tekatan, and served as a serf of the House Calgar. He was companion to the House heir Marneus. The two decided to become Space Marines because of honor and glory and shit. Unfortunately for them, their mentor-teacher person was a corn-worshipping heretic. So of sound body and mind, the two did the only sensible thing. They murdered all of their corrupted classmates. Unfortunately for them, Marneus was killed in the action, and Tekatan took on his name in order to honor him and carry on his spirit. When the Tyranids attacked Ultramar, Old Cal here was overrun by thousands of bugs, resulting in him losing 4 of his limbs. To compensate with this, he replaced them with not 1, but 2 giant fists. Also note, when Guilty Man introduced the Primaris Marines, Marnie was one of the first ones to have the Primaris surgery, despite the 60% mortality rate. Luckily, he survived his info save and managed to survive it. There's also Well known to be one of the greatest Ultramarine warriors, Kato has time and time again proved himself to be a courageous and capable warrior as previous captain of 2nd Company. His accolades are large in number, and each is more epic than the last. It seemed that nothing could stop him, right up till Matt Ward stopped writing about Ultramarines. After Gillisuit was revived by his big tilly Eldar Goth GF, he tasked Kato with taking the first Primaris Marines back to Macragge. Kato immediately gets caught in a warp storm and orders the Primaris to find their own way back home. He spends the next 5 years in the warp, fighting off wave after wave of demons and Chaos Space Marines before finally returning to the material realm. Except now he has ultra depression and survival skill. Nowadays, Kato is being personally tutored by Goofy Man to become more of an actual leader than an exemplary warrior. Then there are the models. What should you spend your hard-earned dollars on? Whatever the fuck you want.